The calm before a storm isn't always that calm. In fact, people on the eastern seaboard of the United States were quite busy preparing for the much anticipated Hurricane Sandy. New York City closed its public transportation in anticipation of the storm, and many schools and offices closed their doors for the day. People all along the eastern coast were preparing for a battering of strong winds, heavy rains, intense tides, and the possibility of heavy flooding. Sandy started in the Caribbean Sea, but its upward threat towards the mainland had Americans battening down the hatches and, more noticeably, stocking up on life necessities in case they were completely shut in. Water, bread, flashlights, and batteries were all in high demand in the days leading up to the storm. Supermarkets all along the east were inundated with an influx of customers stocking up. One New York City resident waited in line for 45 minutes at his local supermarket in anticipation for Sandy. He, however, ended up purchasing 50 cans of beer instead of traditional survival goods. Now, lines like that strain supermarkets everywhere in the expected storm zones. Pictures of many stores show empty shelves due to the high demand. On Weibo, the story of the storm is centered on New York, as it has been slated to receive the first and biggest hit from Sandy. The city and state have also been making the biggest preparations. Let's take a look at what Weibo users have to say about that.
It seems that the Americans have done the same thing that Chinese people do in the face of disasters. When do they plan to hoard the salts?
Now, China has experienced similar panics in the recent past. When the tsunami hit Japan and caused a radiation leak, many Chinese consumers on the coastal provinces took to their local supermarkets to stock up on iodine-laced salts because of some internet comments that said iodine can protect against radiation. Now, it was such a big deal that it made it onto the evening news. However, that was more of a misdirection since the radiation problem wasn't as severe as they thought. And even if it were, I don't think iodinized table salt is going to save anybody. Now, looking back at it, it could have even been a ploy by the salt companies, since the salt craze drove up prices in some small unregulated stores up 5-fold. And of course, no refunds. Now, many buyers who jumped on the bandwagon later admitted that they had enough salt to last them half a century. Oh my. Okay, let's take a look at a few more comments.
Although the Americans are also buying everything at the supermarkets, at least they still do it in an orderly fashion. Every time when I see something like this, it reminds me of the movies.
One story posted on Weibo focuses on Mayor Bloomberg's preparation for the storm. Now, in addition to closing public transportation in New York City, Bloomberg ordered an evacuation of 375,000 people in the city who lived in low-lying areas. According to Reuters news agency, Bloomberg said at a press conference that Sandy is a very serious and dangerous threat. He also has city schools closed on October 29th. Now, for many Chinese, the preparations in the U.S. for Sandy lie in stark contrast to preparations for the massive rainstorm that hit Beijing this past July. Now, after the storm in Beijing, which took a known death toll of 77 people, many Chinese people were angry over a lack of warning from the government that the storm was even coming. Now, there was widespread anger about the Chinese government's handling of the record-breaking rain. And for many, the natural disaster not only represented a tragedy that accounted for the loss of lives and about $1.6 billion in damages, but also exposed the poor state of China's public infrastructure, even in the capital city of over 20 million people. Wow. Let's take a look at how Weibo comments compare the two situations.
Although the word he uses is compulsory, I think it must make many locals feel like the government really cares about them. I think his words show that the U.S. government places the lives of their people first in any situation.
Now, what really angered a lot of Weibo users about Beijing's handling of the rainstorm wasn't that the city's infrastructure was ill-designed, but rather it was how many government employees reacted, or should I say, didn't react. Now, there were areas of flooding on the highways, yet the toll booths were still collecting fees, forming long lineups as the waters slowly started to creep up the cars. Abandoned vehicles that couldn't start were given illegal parking tickets. And little details like these became fodder for Chinese internet jokes for weeks. Now, on the one hand, people were impressed at the traffic cops' dedication, giving out tickets when most people are fleeing onto higher ground, and at the same time wondering if collecting fees is all the government's good at. Now, disaster management is a tricky business. You either contain it and nobody complains, or you're going to get a lot of angry citizens. And that's true no matter where you live in the world. Okay, let's take a look at a couple more comments.
I think it at least shows us that the local residents feel the government is creditable. If our country encounters something similar, I wonder what will happen.
Now, regardless of the comparison of the net effect of the two storms, the preparation by the governments of each respective country reflect on issues greater than the storms. Now, for China, the rainstorm represented a failure on the part of their government and highlighted issues and infrastructure that may manifest itself in other ways as well. America has had problems with this too. Now, if you remember back to the lacking relief efforts in New Orleans after Katrina hit that area. And for Sandy, however, everyone was well prepared, beer and all.